Routing in Angular is actually pretty simple and very powerful once you get a handle of the basics. So let's walk through an app where we use routing to manage the crew of the Star Trek Enterprise, where we can add people and edit people. So let's just dive right into that. And then in part 2 of this video, we will dive into wiring up a backend. So we'll focus on routing in this first part and then get into wiring up a backend in the second part. So we'll set up an app here, ng app of, just we'll call it Enterprise. And then we'll set up a controller. And this video does assume you've watched some other intro to Angular videos of app control. So in here, we'll just test everything's working, and we'll bind to person name, and we'll set up a scope person. I'll say name is Picard. So let's refresh. Looks like everything's working. Picard is being passed in and bound to person name. So now that we have that set up, we can set up our table to show the kind of data that we want to show. So let's see, tables are always great to write in Zen coding just because it looks really sexy when you do things like this. So head and the body, 1 row and 3 cells. Zen coding is available in almost every editor. So we'll say name, description, and then this can be an icon, which will be for adding a new person. So we'll use the Bootstrap icon plus sign. And we'll jump down here, and this will be the person name and the person description. And then this can be the icon that allows you to edit the person. So if we look at what we have now, you can see we have name, description, Picard, and add and edit. Let's make this look a little bit better using some of the Bootstrap stuff, table and a table striped. And then let's also add a kind of a header here. I'll just send you back to the home page, and we'll just call it Enterprise Crew. All right. So looks like it's way too wide. Let's just hack in a style here real quick. Don't hate me because I'm hacky. And looks like we're set. So what we're going to do now is drop some data in kind of the root scope, and then just ng repeat through that. So we'll create a crew, and again, this will be part 2 stuff when we actually start wiring this up to a backend. But for now, we're just going to start dropping in some names and descriptions in here. And his description can be captain. And we'll create a couple more. We have Riker. He can be number 1. And then let's jump over here and say Worf, not work, but Worf. And he can be security. All right, so we have our crew set up. Now we can loop through. Let's see, down here. We will ng repeat through. Just say person in crew. Now that we have that set up, looks like we're looping through all the people, showing their names and their descriptions with add icons and edit icons, and we're pretty much set up to go. So what we're going to do for routing here is grab this entire table, cut it out of here, and set up a new directory called partials. And in our partials directory, you'll create an HTML file called, we'll just call it list. It's good enough for me. We'll just paste the table in here. And now whenever we go to the home page, because we took the table out, you'll see nothing is in there. The way we're going to wire this back up is by creating something called an ng view in here, and then configuring our module using the config method and passing in the route provider. And the route provider is where you can configure things like when you go to the base URL, use this template, which we'll say is partials list HTML. So since the route provider is configured, you can see that when we go to the base URL, it's using this template because we set up a view. Let me just delete this to prove that that's what's happening. So nothing's there. We add the view back in, and then the table shows back up. So again, this is kind of the route provider syntax. You configure your module this way. You inject the route provider, and you can configure what happens when you go to certain URLs. The first thing we're going to do here is actually get rid of this hash by using something called HTML5 mode, and that's going to require the location provider, so we can configure that. And we'll just say HTML5 mode is true, and when I do that, that's going to allow me to get rid of this hash. Basically, all you need to do to set up HTML5 mode on your server, let me just pull up that file real quick, is send any path, have it just redirect to your index.html. I'm just using Express.js in this example. Any regular file that has a file extension is going to be sent normally. Any path is going to be sent just to the index.html. Probably a hacky solution, but again, don't hate me because I'm hacky. Anyway, that can be configured on any server. You don't have to worry about doing it the way I did it there. So moving on from here, now that we have our table set up, let's add some functionality to this. The first thing will be is clicking on this add button and adding a new person to our crew. So in our list, let's wrap this guy and say, when you click on me, why don't you go to a URL that's new? So click, we go to new, nothing's there. So where do we configure that? We configure that with our route provider. And we can say, when you go to new, let's load up a different template called edit. So let's create that template as well. Let's copy and paste the list one and edit that. So in our edit template, we can do something super simple, just a form with an input. ng models person name, person description, and then throw in a button which will allow you to save on click, and say save. We'll make it look a little nicer, button primary. And then once we refresh here, you can see that going to new loads in our edit template, because we told it, say, when you go to new, load in the edit template. Let's add just a bit more text here. We'll say placeholder is enter name, and placeholder is enter description. All right, so that should be good. So whenever we click on this add button, it'll take us to the new URL, which our app will load up the edit template so we can enter a name and enter a description. Now when we click on save now, nothing happens. So let's wire that up by assigning that template a controller. So let's say the controller is going to be something called the new controller, and set up a new controller. So when you save, let's send it back to the base URL. And to manipulate the path, we actually have to inject something called location. And then from there, we can just say location path is this, and just wrap that in a save function. All right, so whenever you click save, it's going to just send you back to the home page for now, because this is calling save. So we'll refresh, hit save, send you back to the home, hit add, send you back to new. So let's actually hook up the person so that when you save it does something. So we'll just say the person is someone without a name and someone without a description. And then once you hit save, we will just simply push him into the crew. Scope person and refresh. We'll enter a name of Crusher and we'll call him the unsung hero. Hit enter to save, and you can see we now have Crusher added to our crew complement. So moving on from there, now that we can add new people whenever we want, LaForge engineer. Can add new people when we want. Let's hook up this edit button so that you can also edit, whoever you want to edit. So we'll come in here, say when you click on our edit guy, we'll send you to the edit page. Test this out. So edit doesn't have anything assigned to it yet. So we'll set up the edit URL. So edit, and I'm going to change it in our, instead of using the new controller, we'll use an edit controller. So that'll give us a bit more, it'll allow us to do something different. When we go to the same template, we can use a different controller. So I'll just say edit controller. We'll also need the location in here. But the problem we're running into right now is that when we click on edit, so like we'll want to edit the captain, when we go to the edit page, we don't have the information of the person that we selected. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to pass in the person that we selected by using the index of where we are in our loop when we loop through the crew. Index is just where we are in the array that we're looping through. And we're going to use that by setting up a route parameter in here with just :id. Then when we have a :id, we can just simply use route params, and we can say route params.id. So we can just assign our scope person to the guy in the crew who is located at route params ID. So now if I go back and I select the captain, you can see that we're at the index of 0, and that's where Picard was. And we can demote him to an ensign, but save isn't set up yet. So let's set up what happens when you hit save in here. And we'll just say location path, which will send you back home. All right, so we'll edit the captain. Again, devote him to ensign, hit save, and you can see that now the captain is an ensign. We'll add someone else. Again, Crusher, the child. We can edit Worf so that he, instead of security, he's just some honorable man. Add anyone else, Troy, telepath. And you can see we have a fully functional app. And the last thing I want to show here is if you go to a URL that you don't have a template set up for, and you want to handle that and send the user somewhere else in the app, you can just come into the route provider, configure it to say otherwise, redirect to, and you can say, we'll just use the base URL. So if you try and go to some URL that doesn't exist, like foo, it just goes back to the base URL, or delete, it just goes back to the base URL. So that's our app, and that's routing in AngularJS. The part 2 of this, we'll start talking about wiring up a backend. Hope this has been helpful.